welcome back to day 2 of the inaugural ChainSafe CSCON. Really excited to have everybody here today again. My name is Stu. I'll be your MC for the first half of today. Really excited to be here. We got a great speaker lineup for you today. But before we kind of get started with that, let's maybe do some technical housekeeping for anybody who's not familiar with Remo. So when you first log into the event, you're going to be randomly assigned to a table. At that point, if you want to join the conversation, you just double click on the table and it'll kind of look like most group call software that you're familiar with using. And then just be sure to turn the microphone on and your camera on, and you'll be able to interact with the other people at your table. Cool. And so if you want to move around, that option's totally available. You just have to double click on any other table that you see within kind of the lobby area. And then once you do, you'll hear the knock knock sound, letting you know that somebody new has entered the table. And so in that situation, you'll only be able to hear and see people there that are at your table. And if you want to go away from the thumbnail mode, you just click tile view at the kind of the bottom dashboard section. And then you can click back to floor if you want to see the whole event space, all the tables in the event space, and then go back to kind of the thumbnails. Feel free to move around the tables. Don't feel tied to one table. If there's people around that you recognize and interact with, please feel free to do that. And yeah, if you run into any technical issues, Paulina or Dustin are here to help. So feel free to reach out to them in the chat. And so while presentation mode is on, you'll see the stage come into the screen, kind of like what's happening right now. And then you won't be able to hear or see your table mates. The presentation will kind of take over as the main focus for the event space. And if you're a speaker and you have any questions, Cindy is going to be our go-to person. So feel free to reach out with her if you have any questions. Cool. So yeah, to get to the speakers today, we have talks from 12 different companies. Very exciting. Scheduled talks starting in just a few moments from now until 4:30 today is our final for 4:30 EST. So don't feel tied to have to stay all day if you don't want to. If you got other commitments, feel free to come in and out as you kind of see fit. And yeah, feel free to check out the schedule. We have it at cscon.chainsafe.io, and that'll give you the full rundown of speakers. So now to kind of get us started for today, very excited to introduce Bassem El-Ramesh is our VP operations here at ChainSafe. Been here very long time, was the first employee that we actually hired. And so very excited to hear him talk about accounting in crypto and how that's kind of done from a business perspective. Get Bassem up here. So I think Bassem, if you turn on your mic and camera, awesome. Thanks, buddy. So take it away.
Okay, can everyone hear me now? I think it should be good. Okay. Thank you everyone for coming in here today. My name is Bassem. I'm VP of Operations at ChainSafe. You know, thank you for the introduction. As you said, I've been at Kingsway for a bit over well under 3 years now. From the beginning of one state was actually Kingsway was actually picking up. Yeah, thank you from CSCON, and thank you for taking the time to join me here today to discuss. We hope that you will find this informative. So to begin with, this presentation is composed of three main components. So to begin with, I will start off by talking about why we use crypto, and then I will move on to talk about the challenges that we face when we use crypto, and then finally I will talk about our approaches to addressing those challenges and how we can overcome them in an environment where there is not so much regulation or understanding of how this can be done. To begin with, I will start by talking about why we use crypto. So the first reason that we use crypto, and I think that to us is the most important factor, is that it aligns with our mission, which is to realize the potential of Web3 through sustainable and open source development. And we always want to live up to our mission and to our role in the community. And so we find one of the ways that we can do that is by streamlining using crypto as a method of payment, and also encouraging everyone to use crypto as a way for us to increase adoption of Web3 and to spread decentralization all over the world. And to do that, this is one of the things that we can do, and we and doing and encouraging. The second reason of why we use crypto is stakeholder preference. We are a company that is based in Toronto, but we operate across borders. A significant percentage of our community partners and team members prefer crypto as a form of payment, or at least as a portion of that payment. And we always try to honor that, and we try to work with it and make it possible whenever it is desired or necessary. As to give you some context here, we are a company that is based in Toronto, Canada, but however, 60% or more of our team members are located outside of Canada. We are committed to be able to work internationally and across the globe, and to provide opportunities for everyone around the world. And so we are spread, as you can see on the map, for across 15 countries. And I do have to apologize for some of my team members here that feel like their countries are not highlighted. Sometimes we had a bit of a difficulty highlighting some of the smaller countries on the map. But we love you, and we definitely care about you on all of these countries across the globe. And also, I want to say also that it goes without saying that when we have such an international team like that, crypto payments are always the superior option for payments, and that is due to cheaper transaction fees and faster processing times. So, for example, when we want to send out a payment to someone living in a foreign country, one of the options is sending a wire transfer through the bank. That option usually takes a few days to clear, and it comes with a lot of errors, and we get a lot of complaints about payments not being processed, banks holding up payments and asking for different kinds of clarifications and asking for more information about every payment we make, and that delays the payment process by sometimes weeks. While with crypto, there's almost instant finality. Within a few minutes, a payment can be processed and cleared. And the other benefit to crypto in this situation is that there is much cheaper transaction fees. So for the bank transfer that I spoke about, you would pay around $25 per transaction, while in crypto it's or in the Ethereum blockchain, it's usually less than $1. And so, as we can see, also, there is a demand for crypto in our community. More than 50% of our team members accept or prefer crypto as a method of payment, or as a partial payment. And on the other hand, almost all of our community partners offer crypto as a form of payment or as a portion of that payment, and they also offer it as an incentive mechanism when they partner with us around certain projects. So for those reasons, we do have the necessity to work with crypto, and in addition to it being something that we believe in. The third factor is, for the third reason why we use crypto, is participation in the ecosystem. So in addition to working on building the infrastructure for Web3, we believe in the value of participating in these networks that we take part in developing and securing and building. And so examples of that would be while we work as a on Lodestar, our Ethereum 2.0 client, and now that we have Ethereum, Ethereum 2.0 is here, and we feel like it is our duty to become part of that network and participate as validators, and that requires us using crypto, of course. Other examples of that would be joining as validators in Filecoin, and because it's also another project that we work on and we deeply and strongly believe in. So these have been, the reasons for why we use crypto. There's a lot more nuance to that, but this is just a brief picture of the reasons for why we use it. Next up, we will talk about the challenges of that. There are a lot of challenges that come that we face when we use crypto, especially from the bookkeeping and the accounting side. And keep in mind, a lot of those challenges are not necessarily always related to the nature of how crypto works. Quite the opposite. Crypto is always a superior way of making payments and securing investments and everything like that. However, a lot of those challenges come from regulations and tax implications, and specifically from how we can do our bookkeeping and our accounting. So the first and the most obvious challenge that we face when we use crypto is volatility. So price changes every day. That makes it difficult for us to keep track of costs at a given time. So if we send a payment today at a certain value, we can look tomorrow at the value of that payment, and probably would be different. It could be less, it could be more, and that adds a lot of challenges when we want to figure out our bookkeeping and accounting. And that also makes it difficult for us to estimate when we receive payments in crypto, to estimate revenues and how to keep it up to date with changing token values. So that complicates how we interpret the health of the financial health of our organization, and it complicates how we can estimate revenues and profit and loss. And so just from an internal company perspective, it makes it a lot harder to be able to evaluate how we are doing as a company. The second challenge that we face is figuring out the tax implications for when it comes to gains and losses. So as I said earlier, prices change all the time, and the value of the tokens that we hold and we use for payments or we receive from partners are changing all the time. So not only it's hard for us to understand how we are doing as a company and how our financial health is doing and our cash flow, but also how do we report them? How do we report gains and losses? And do we do that quarterly? Do we do that yearly? What value do we use at what time? Do we use the value at the time that we receive the money? Do we do it at the time that we file the taxes? Do we do it at the end of the year? So that kind of adds a lot of complexities. Governments and tax agencies in most jurisdictions have not defined how we can report crypto gains and losses. So that kind of adds a layer of difficulty when we want to categorize our assets and report revenues and gains and losses. And that leaves us in a position where we have to figure out how we can label everything, how we can establish pricing, and the approach that we can take may not go well with what the regulatory agencies see things, and that might complicate things when there's an audit or when there's a time for reporting, let alone how we work with accounting firms and how they also view things. So that makes the task a lot more daunting. and complicates everything on our end, because every day is different, and the numbers that we figured out yesterday in Canadian or US dollars would be different from today. So the third challenge that we face when we use crypto is the lack of an automated accounting software. And just to give you some context, a lot of companies that use crypto end up, will have to use both cryptocurrencies and fiat currencies to conduct their transactions. And while there's an existing infrastructure for doing accounting for fiat money using bank accounts, there's no equivalent and an easy way to do it for crypto. And the additional layer of challenge here is that we need to combine both. So we have worked with community partners before. There has been attempts to solve this problem by a number of members in the community. We have worked with companies like Very Ledger, and there's exciting projects coming up like Partial that we are kind of developing connections with. We are working with them on developing their product and giving them suggestions and ideas for what might work. But there remains a lot of challenges. So we are not there yet. We are not at a time where this can be done in an automated way, and we still do a lot of manual work. Some of the challenges that come with that is that these solutions haven't really addressed. In some cases, there's a difficulty in accounting for transaction fees, or taking the values of these tokens at a certain time, or where do we get to the source of truth or the value of these tokens. And on the other hand, there's also dealing with multiple blockchains. And because we are a blockchain agnostic organization, we find it difficult to find an automated software or a solution that can actually take and give us information and compile them across blockchains. So challenges we found ourselves were to come up with solutions, right? We are committed to using crypto, so we did not want to say that, no, we will not use crypto. We are committed to doing this, and we are committed to figuring out how to do it. And to do that, we have developed some approaches that we found to be helpful for us. And these approaches can be summarized in one word, to be honest, and it's just improvise. We needed to improvise. We needed to do everything to the best of our ability. And we hope that the knowledge that we gain can help other organizations who are facing a similar issue, and also maybe help regulatory agencies and governments and figuring out how to deal with crypto transactions as well. So the first approach is stablecoins. Stablecoins have become a revolution in crypto payments and financing. For us, they have offered a great solution that solves the problem of volatility, because they also, we, as a company that is based in Canada, we often use foreign currencies like the US dollar. And when we use a foreign currency, stablecoins like DAI offer a great solution, because we can treat it just like any other foreign currency like the US dollar. So it's much easier to keep track of that. But we also realize that stablecoins are not the full solution for our problem, because we still need to use other tokens for. And so one of the ways that can help is that they reduce the amount of transactions that we have to deal with accounting for transactions. And so what happens in this case, for example, is that we end up, let's say we want to send payments for our team members as a compensation for work. So instead of sending, let's say at a given period of time, instead of sending 50 transactions in a volatile currency, we can do one transaction where we swap the volatile currency to a stable currency, to a stable coin, and then we can send 49 transactions in a stable coin. So we can are stable and will not change to deal with one transaction out of 50 that is volatile and that is subject to interpretation. And so in that way, we were able to kind of address that problem. It was not a solution that we came up with, but it was a solution that the community has offered. And we always I always want to reiterate how that made this so much easier and have made this more accessible to everyone. And so the second approach that we presentations for multiple blockchains, but also combine the traditional accounting system that we use and oftentimes we can find ourselves using and when we want to go use the accounting softwares for crypto that we have found, there's a difficulty in integrating the two. So far we were, the only solution that we have is the records and try to integrate those with a solution that works well. It's not perfect. I would say it comes with a 95% certainty. However, it takes a lot of time and effort, and it takes a lot of thinking, and it takes a lot of revisiting what we did to be able to make sure that we are reporting things correctly and to the best of our ability. And as I said earlier, like with having stablecoins helps because we are able to limit the number of transactions, and we can do we can, for example, instead of recording every transaction fee at once, we can lump sum all of our transaction fees and add them once a month or so we can actually limit the amount of work that comes from having to deal with these transactions. And yeah, so we use stablecoins. We keep a manual record of things, and then we integrate that with our accounting software. And then we translate that and we keep updating it based on the market value. However, this is for transactions. It doesn't really solve all of the problems. So there's still more to do when we are dealing with a lot of coins that are being used for different purposes. And so that brings me to the third approach that we have when it comes to tax implications. And so, as I said earlier, we use multiple coins, and some of them we use for payments, and some of them we use for we store for investments, for staking, and so that kind of complicates things when it comes to reporting gains or losses for that. And so when it comes to taxes, I think the key word here is improvise. We look at the current financial market. We look at how the existing tax regulations work with any other asset outside of the crypto. And so we try to draw parallels between the existing tax, kind of the best way for us to fill in the gap between the existing taxing infrastructure and the legal framework and this new industry that we are working on that we hope that can be more streamlined in the future. And I can give you an example for how we do that. To put simply, probably categorize our cryptocurrencies into two main categories. And the question that we ask ourselves in every scenario is, why are we using those tokens? Or what is the purpose of us using those tokens? If the purpose is to receive things, and both, we can categorize foreign currency. And so whenever there is an appreciation or depreciation in the value of Ether or any other coin that we use for payments, we can count it as a foreign exchange loss or gain. US dollars, the value of that changes as compared to the Canadian dollars. And so the exact same mechanism we use for US dollars, we can use for those coins. And I think, and that is our best way of explaining to tax authorities for for what we were doing and why we reported certain things. And we have tokens that are being used for staking or as an investment, and for a future that for us to kind of use later, realize the gain from at a later stage. And so with that category, if we categorize those tokens as investments, we can categorize them as current assets, and then we can report those as unrealized gain or unrealized loss, and then we can at the end of every period, if we decide to sell them, we can report them as a capital gain or loss. And if we don't decide to sell them, they end up being as unrealized, and so that we can keep them updated in our books without having to completely record them as a gain or as part of our revenue. But to sum things up, these are just very simple approaches that we have. We are trying our best to improvise and to come up with solutions and approaches to address these issues. But there has been a lot of progress in the community. We are working with amazing communities, particularly them. We are working with tax authorities as well as accounting firms to provide a better understanding or come together to a better understanding for how we can do this. But what hasn't changed throughout this time is our commitment to spreading the adoption of Web3 and our commitment to in providing that option to everyone who wants and encouraging everyone to accept crypto as a means of payment and also as a store of value. So this brings us to the end of this presentation. Thank you so much for listening, and I also want to say that while we haven't figured everything out completely, this is just to say that we have this is our approach. It may not be the most correct approach. It may not be the wrong approach either. But I would consider this as a starting point for a conversation with our community members to get feedback on how are we doing, how are we doing things compared to others, and how we can always continue to improve harmonization when it comes to how we report our crypto and how we can integrate it with our accounting systems. And we hope that you found this presentation helpful and insightful. And as a lot of my peers said yesterday, we are hiring at ChainSafe. We are always looking for amazing team members to join. Or you have any ideas or thoughts or suggestions on how we do things, you're always welcome to reach out to us on Twitter at ChainSafeETH. And if you're interested in joining the team or learning more about the opportunities that we have, you can email us at careers@chainsafe.io, or you can visit our website, our careers page, which is chainsafe.io/careers. And with that, I'll open up for anyone who has any questions.
Yeah, thanks, Bassem. Really appreciate all of your hard-earned expertise on this. I know it's been a pretty steep learning curve over the last few years to be able to kind of respond and be able to find the most efficient path through these problems. So definitely appreciate that. But yeah, we do have a couple of audience questions for you. So the first one being, do you think giving the option for crypto payments to employees offers a competitive advantage for talent retention?
Absolutely. Absolutely. We have worked with people who would only accept crypto as a form of payment. And at times where this was a bit difficult, we found it to be challenging. And for a lot of our community members and our team members as well, they have found that the fact that we offer that option for them has been a really great motivator for them to join ChainSafe, because they find us to be a flexible organization that attend to their needs and what they would like and what they want. And they find with that also a commitment from us to increase adoption and in the community as well.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Bassem. And so secondly, we have, do you think companies offering alternative payment options in crypto will become more common? And if so, what do you think the regulatory response to those changes would look like?
So I do see that increase. I think over time, that number of people who offer crypto or accept crypto as a form of payment has been increasing over time. We have, and again, as I said, with the case of stablecoins offered a great solution for that. And when that option was available, the amount of transactions increased by a lot. And so that is definitely on the rise. I don't know how much I can talk about the effect of that on on how governments would react to that. We realize that governments have no option but to accept this at some point. And the fact that that an increasing number of people are using crypto and receiving payments in crypto will force governments to have no option but to figure out regulations and come up with innovative ways for understanding and accepting that this is a fact of how we do things right now, and it will get them to a point where they will need to work with it. So in a sense, I see this as a positive pressure that can be applied on a lot of our regulatory agencies for them to keep up with the change in technology and the change of how we do things.
Yeah, totally agree. I guess like a critical mass of users is one way to kind of push a regulatory response. So yeah, like I really appreciate your insights on this, and thanks for taking the time to speak with us today. Awesome.
Thank you for organizing this, and thank you again for all the ChainSafe Party Planning Committee. This has been amazing.
Yeah, big shout out to the Party Planning Committee, and also thanks to Bassem for pointing out that we are hiring. Please feel free to check out our website, chainsafe.io, especially the careers section. And yeah, please, if you're enjoying the content you're seeing, tweet out with the hashtag CSCON and retweet the tweets that we're putting out in terms of the live streaming videos. But yeah, thank you very much, Bassem.
Hi, everyone.
Cheers. So now we can move on to our second speaker of the day. We're going to hear now from David Ansermino, who has also been a very long time ChainSafe employee and has been working with us since the very early days. He is going to speak to us today in regards to Filecoin retrieval markets. Take it away, David. Sorry, David, we're having sound issues. It looks like you are not muted. Is there a microphone issue that could be causing problems? Wait a moment for David to rejoin us. So while we're waiting for David, like I mentioned, all of this is going to be live streamed on YouTube. So feel free to check out any talks that you're not able to necessarily attend today. Those will be available kind of on an ongoing basis, and we're going to be putting out tweets on a regular basis in terms of what type of content will be available. How are you doing, David? Still no, unfortunately. I feel like I can hear an echo in the background, though. And you can hear us all right? Always unexpected technical issues to deal with.
How about now?
Oh, perfect, buddy. Glad to hear your voice.
Cool. The choice of Bluetooth devices on Linux. Awesome. So go ahead and share my screen. Awesome. So my name is David Anserino. I work at ChainSafe Systems. And today I'm going to be talking a bit about Filecoin retrieval markets and a project that we worked on specifically to utilize gossiping to enable secondary retrieval markets. So presently, the Filecoin architecture gives you something like this. Any user can select a given miner and initiate a storage deal with them. So that user can store the files with that miner. The user can also do retrieval deals. And so they can ask the miner for the data and get it back. In this picture here, the user is dealing with one specific miner. And so that obviously kind of limits the availability of the data and provides sufficient retrieval access, but there's definitely things here that could kind of be improved a bit. It's important to note that these miners are participating in the consensus algorithm. In Filecoin, we're particularly looking at proof of storage. There's kind of two pieces to the algorithm that they use. The first is proof of replication. And so those miners are taking that data and actually encoding it to create a unique copy of it. And then over time, they participate in proof of space-time, which is when they are asked to randomly supply pieces of that data. And this allows proofs that they are actually storing that data over a period. And so with this in mind, the data that the miners are actually storing is what we call sealed. And so that's the encoded data. And one of the limitations with this is that to actually provide the original data, that sealed data has to be unsealed or decoded. And this is a computationally expensive process. And there's definitely a lot of improvements coming down the pipeline quite quickly in terms of the sealing process and efficiency there. But generally, this kind of provides a limitation for how rapidly the storage miners can provide retrieval. There is one very simple solution that is available, which is simply to have the miners store a copy of the data that is unsealed. And this obviously has some cost benefits to consider. I apologize for this diagram being very small, but this is the entire retrieval deal flow from when a user attempts to retrieve a piece of data from a miner to when they actually get that back. And I just want to kind of highlight this one portion of it here, which is the data transfer protocol, which is quite interesting. Effectively, the client will receive a small portion of that data and then provide a payment voucher through a payment channel that allows the miner to then be paid for providing that retrieval. And so this is obviously a lot more complex in implementation, but it provides a basic data transfer protocol that could quite easily be applied to different contexts. The only on-chain component here is really the payment channel that gets used. And it's definitely possible to, kind of integrate this with possibly other payment channels that exist, maybe beyond just the Filecoin network. So this is a very interesting component of kind of the existing mechanisms that are provided in the core protocol, and definitely provides opportunities to be used in other areas as well. So zooming out a bit, this is kind of what we see with the network. We have the miners that make up the Filecoin network, and then clients kind of coming to these miners and doing storage and retrieval deals with them. When we start to look at secondary markets, we're picturing something a bit more like this. where there's perhaps an intermediary or a third party that is able to fulfill clients' requests for data. So these providers would be making this data available, possibly by retrieving it off the Filecoin network or perhaps through some other means. And then given the data transfer protocol that exists, they can leverage this to gather incentivization and kind of engage in a very similar exchange process. And then, yeah, this is obviously kind of external to the core Filecoin network. Some of the benefits of this are that it reduces the reliance on storage miners. Storage miners can focus on the computationally expensive process of doing the sealing process and effectively storing data. It also lowers the storage requirements for those who are attempting to provide data. So perhaps instead of having access to a lot of storage, you have a really fast connection. And so you can kind of opt to optimize your setup for retrieval just based on what benefits you have available to you. In doing this, we also improve the availability of the data on the network. There's more entry points for users to come in and potentially retrieve the data that they're looking for. We would see a lot more replication and that sort of thing. One of the reasons to design things this way is definitely to avoid adding further complexity to the core protocol. The proof of storage is definitely, a rather innovative protocol in its design, and is definitely pushing many of the limits of, the cryptography and other components that we have available to us. And so by moving this out of the core protocol, we kind of allowed that to be focused on, and we can perhaps implement multiple different solutions to adapt to different use cases to really help grow the use of the network. One other interesting point here is that this data that's being provided most certainly doesn't need to come from Filecoin. It's certainly conceivable that providers can provide data that anybody's willing to pay for effectively, whether or not that's being actively stored on Filecoin. The common example I like to use is, classical literature. If perhaps, you have 100 books that, are well known and are constantly in demand, you can make those available and be paid just for the retrieval service, not for the actual content yourself. Looking at some of the key requirements to really build a system like this, some of these we have, some are work in progress. Content addressing is definitely a very important one here, kind of a fundamental component of Filecoin and IPFS. And in this context, it's particularly useful for ensuring the integrity of the data. So, if you have a third party that's providing you data, you can ensure that the data that you're getting is the data that you're requesting. And that's a very simple thing to do. It also gives us global addressing. And so we can address exactly the content that we want in any context. There shouldn't be any conflicting addresses or anything like that. The data exchange protocol, which I mentioned earlier, this allows for payments to the retrieval provider for providing that data, and it also protects both parties. So both if the provider is acting maliciously and perhaps stops sending all the files, there is a penalty for that. And similarly, if the client doesn't receive all the data, then they won't be necessarily required to pay the full price. Some of the things that are still being worked on, discovery mechanisms. So if you're looking for a piece of data, how do you find the best retrieval provider? Certainly the definition of best could vary depending on what context you're in and what needs you might have. And so we certainly see a number of potential solutions coming out for this. And another big unknown is kind of how you optimize storage for retrieval. So, in order to provide a file, you certainly need to have that data available. And given that there's incentives to provide storage on the Filecoin network, you need to then kind of rationalize the cost of the storage space that you're using specifically for retrieval. And kind of to get into this a bit further, we also need to consider what is perhaps the most profitable. How do you look at the network and kind of decide what people are requesting and what you might pay to retrieve in order to make it available so you can participate in that. So definitely a lot of interesting potentials there. The project that we worked on had a couple goals. Really the main one was to discover a mechanism, to create a novel discovery mechanism for finding data, specifically using gossip sub through libp2p. And so we want to be able to allow clients to gossip a message and effectively retrieve or receive responses from retrieval providers who can provide them the data that they're looking for. We also want to start to inform the retrieval providers of what is being requested, so what's popular and what might be profitable, and start to kind of explore some of the potential avenues for optimizing this. And another big piece of this is really allowing miners to be exclusively retrieval providers. So as you saw on the first slide, the kind of core protocol has the miner being responsible for both storage and retrieval. And so this is really focusing on taking out the retrieval portion and allowing that to kind of exist in isolation. So to give you a bit more of a clear picture of how this works, let's say we have a client who wants a piece of data, and here we have several providers on the network. And so the client can go ahead and submit their query to the gossip sub network, typically through some Bootstrap nodes. And then those nodes can gossip the request to the other provider, and all the providers who have the data available can then respond to the client with an offer. And then the client is able to use that data exchange protocol to actually retrieve the data and pay for that retrieval from that provider using the parameters that were specified in the offer. Just to get a little more technical and look a bit more concretely at these components. So the client is simply submitting requests for data to the network. They then keep themselves open to receive responses directly from providers, and are then it's up to them to kind of decide which offer is the best, which you may be willing to pay a lower cost for a slower connection or something like that. And so they can kind of choose freely which one they want to engage on. The provider is really just responsible for listening to requests from clients. They will receive a CID, which specifies the data that the client is looking for. And then they'll go and look in their data store and see if they have it available. If they do, they can respond directly to the client with the parameters that would be required to initiate the retrieval. So things like pricing. As I mentioned, one of the big questions here is how you optimize for profitability or potentially availability. More precisely, how do providers decide what data is worth providing? One of the big considerations here is if you're making data available from the Filecoin network, you're going to have to retrieve that data yourself. And so you perhaps need to factor in the cost of that initial retrieval versus the potential profit that you can get from it. Alternatively, you could use other methods to obtain data. There's, as I mentioned, nothing necessarily that ties all this directly to the Filecoin network in terms of the data that's being provided. Furthermore, we could perhaps develop a network of providers that are exchanging data that's available on Filecoin to kind of populate their own data stores, very similar to how IPFS functions. A big consideration here is the change in profitability due to pricing and popularity adjustments. So the cost for retrieval on the network is definitely variable and can kind of be impacted by any number of factors. For example, if a couple nodes go offline, the price for retrieval could be pushed up. Similarly, if more nodes come online, the pricing for retrieval could go down. And also popularity. So, one piece of data might be valuable today, but completely worthless tomorrow. And so these definitely need to be taken into consideration. And we need to start developing some kind of novel ways of approaching these problems. One big thing to note here is that the locality of a provider can affect its desirability. In a decentralized network, like, for example, a gossip subnetwork like we have here, depending on which node on the network you look from, you're going to get a very different perspective. And so if a node, depending on where a node is in the network, it can certainly affect, even if something is popular, whether or not that node is the correct one to be serving it. And so you can't necessarily make general assumptions about various pieces of the network. You very much need to focus on your particular perspective. To start kind of playing around with these ideas and give a little more insight into what's really going on, we included some basic mechanisms to provide some metrics and insights. So there's now a few cache inside of the providers, which is tracking the end most frequent requests. So this could easily be taken and kind of used to decide which files to retrieve from Filecoin, perhaps take a subset of these that are the least expensive to retrieve, and then make those available. And so there's definitely a few things that could be done with this data. And then the software also provides a subscription mechanism so that an external service could actually subscribe to all the requests that are happening on the network. This obviously provides further extensibility. And again, it could be a similar idea where if something is deemed worthy of being retrieved, it could then go and be retrieved. Similarly, this might be interacting with perhaps a network of providers who are kind of exchanging data between each other to make it more available. So the implementation lives here under ChainSafe/Phil secondary retrieval markets. Please go check it out. Right now, it is more or less fully functional. The kind of component that we're still trying to nail down is just integrating the data transfer protocol. As I mentioned, one of our main goals here is to really separate it from the storage miner. And the present implementation makes some assumptions that it's being used within the context of a storage miner. And so we're hoping to isolate that a bit further and then directly integrate these components to give a seamless experience. So yeah, I do have a small demo, which I'll do just now. But yeah, I definitely want to reiterate that we're hiring. We work on lots of cool, exciting, emerging technologies like this. And so definitely, if it piques your interest, come chat with us. Definitely, if you have any questions about what I've been speaking about, please reach out to me. I love talking about this stuff. So definitely, yeah. I'm going to try to switch over to this. So here I have 4 terminals. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to run 3 retrieval providers and 1 retrieval client and attempt to request data from these retrieval providers. This is all using Gossip Sub, so we need to first establish a retrieval provider, which we'll use as a boot node. So I can go ahead and take its listening address here, and I can pass it into the other two providers. And so those should be all connected now. And then the way that I've configured this is that this retrieval provider does not have any data available, and these two do have a particular CID available. And so I'm going to go to the client here and go ahead and specify the boot node address again, and then go ahead and request the CID that I loaded into both of these. And so as you can see, both of these received the query, and we got two responses here, each with specific parameters for what the cost of retrieval is. And so now the client can go ahead and actually utilize the data transfer protocol to perform that exchange. So yeah, that's all I have to share. Thanks so much for listening. And yeah, thanks everyone for coming out.
Awesome. Thank you so much, David. Really exciting to see Filecoin in action too. So thanks for sharing that demo. So we're just going to take a quick moment just to answer some questions from the audience. First one being, how important do you think secondary retrieval markets will become within the Filecoin system?
I would say that they're fairly critical to the adoption of Filecoin. Definitely, you know, if we look at the existing internet infrastructure, the speed at which you can retrieve something is definitely a very important variable when it comes to providing internet-based services. And so we have a lot of like last mile endpoints that make data available very close to consumers. And so if we want Filecoin to kind of keep up with systems like this, we definitely need to develop a number of solutions that can address a variety of use cases, whether it's this kind of you know, last mile serving of data, or even just quick retrieval or perhaps free retrieval. And so, yeah, definitely as it exists, Filecoin has the functionality to both do storage and retrieval, but really to gain the adoption that we're looking for, it's definitely going to be critical to build out several solutions for this.
Definitely still in its early days for sure. So second now, how do you distinguish between primary retrieval markets and secondary? Because even primary retrieval markets make the use of payment channels.
Totally. Really, we're looking at the participants. So in the primary market, you have to be a storage provider or a storage miner. And so that's kind of the primary market. Is the storage deals are somewhat conflated with the retrieval deals. And so the secondary market goes outside of that core protocol, and that's certainly one distinguishing aspect, is that it's external to the core protocol, but really it's just breaking out that retrieval piece so that it can be further utilized.
Awesome. Thank you very much. So finally, is there a benefit of being a retrieval provider if no one within the retrieval provider's locale is requesting data? For example, if I'm in the Arctic and no one is requesting data in that region.
Yeah, that definitely could pose a problem. Definitely, like it does appear that even people with perhaps not the fastest connection could still be desirable if they're in, you know, a location such as the Arctic, but definitely it's a huge consideration. And I mean, even just being in perhaps South America or Africa, these are definitely continents where we're seeing less rapid adoption, less availability of data, you definitely need to really try to get an idea of whether or not there is a potential market fit for you. But certainly, I imagine that everywhere in the world, there is a potential use case, and it's really just a matter on honing in on what should be provided.
Awesome. Yeah. Thanks, David. Cool. So we're going to take just a 2 or 3 minute break now, and then we'll be back with our next speaker, Remington Ong, who's a partner of Fenbushi Capital. So see y'all right back.